Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? How's that? Better? All right. Welcome back. I first wanted to say thank you to the library for hosting us again this year. This is the library patrons that come to welcome us here are really phenomenal. So thank you all. We fill this room. It lets us know that someone's seeing what we're doing and enjoying what we're doing. So welcome back again. I also want to thank the Sunnylands staff that's here. So we have our, you can all wave. We have our new estate chief, Mike Elzey. We have Joel Garcia from our education department. We have the former executive director of Sunnylands, Janice Lyle. And I'll be introducing our speakers in a minute. So the other day, I was looking through the past exhibitions that we did here. The very first one that we did was March 2012, and that was Timothy Schroeder presenting our silver gilt collection and the exhibition Regency Elegance, English Silver Gilt at Sunnylands. Were any of you here for that? Oh my gosh, you were, okay. I looked at the recording from that day when Janice was introducing Timothy Schroeder and announcing the opening of Sunnylands. And my favorite part was watching her explain how to get our house tour tickets. We had not anticipated this first rush of tickets. And after she shared that we sold 600 tickets in 4 minutes, she promised it wouldn't always be this hard. That was 12 years ago. And today we would like to promise again that it won't always be this hard. But we continue to thank you for your patience and your support of Sunnylands. We love having you come visit. Since 2012, our curatorial team has every year found a way to explore the treasures that the Annenbergs left us, whether it was through their experiences or collection items, from New Year's Eve parties to a totem pole. From a bronze Mexican column to the Pacific Flyway. Each exploration of their lives has offered new opportunities to expand their story. Variations to a theme, William Haines at Sunnylands explores the influence of William Haines on the Annenbergs' homes, in particular their winter home Sunnylands. If you haven't already seen the exhibition, I invite you to visit the Center Gardens and explore some of the most beautiful pieces up close. Do not sit on them. Thank you. But today you're in for a treat. You get not only one expert on this collection, but 3. Frank Lopez, Sunnylands Archivist and Librarian, will speak first, sharing who Haines was, how the collection came to be, while working with architect A. Quincy Jones, and he will introduce the exhibition at Sunnylands Center Gardens. Next, Rowe, our heritage director, will speak about the details of the collection and how Haines adapted his previous style for Sunnylands and these very special clients. Following Anne, well-known Haines expert, exhibition partner and consultant Patrick Dragonette has graciously agreed to host a Q&A session to share even more about the Haines canon, its importance and relevance in today's design landscape. He knows this more than anyone, and we graciously thank him for contributing to the exhibition. I'm now going to turn this over to our first speaker, Frank Lopez.
Thank you for those introductions, Mick. And good afternoon, everyone. We're so delighted that you're here this afternoon, and we're excited to talk about the world-class designer, William Billy Haines, and his incredible design work he executed for the Annenbergs at Sunnylands. First, I want to send our birthday wishes to Leonore Annenberg, as next week, February 20th, is her 106th anniversary of her birth. It's only fitting that we are in this beautiful library as the Annenbergs donated the land and funds for the building. as a community resource. Today, our crash course will be on Haines. I'll start off with Haines, a brief overview, and our current exhibition. Anne's going to share her insights on the Haines designs, and we'll conclude with a Q&A with Patrick Dragonette. To kick off my presentation, here are a few biographical facts about Charles William Billy Haines. He was born in Stoughton, Virginia on January 2nd, 1900. He is the eldest of 5 siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and the family business was named the Haines Cigar Company. Billy left home at the age of 14 and found his way to New York City at 16, where he took on a variety of jobs in department stores, a bond company, modeling, and more. During his lifetime, Haines had 2 highly successful careers, first as a leading Hollywood film actor, and later a sophisticated and exquisite furniture and interior designer. So at the age of 22, Haines arrived in Hollywood after winning a Samuel Goldwyn Corporation New Faces talent contest. His handsome good looks and his wisecracking persona catapulted him to become a popular box office silent film star in the 1920s and 30s. He successfully bridged the transition from silent movies to talking films. His filmography credits him with over 50 movies. And in 1926, Haines met his life partner, James Jimmy Shields, who later moved from New York City to Los Angeles. While making movies, he also opened a Hollywood antique shop with Mitchell Foster in 1930. Haines is one of the Hollywood's most famous actors until his departure in 1934. After refusing to be straight for his studio bosses, his acting career was over. Haines refused to leave Shields, and instead of agreeing to a lavender marriage, he departed Hollywood to pursue other interests. Haines' lifetime love of antiques helped him to reinvent himself as an innovative, self-taught designer and decorator. Haines is considered the king of Hollywood Regency with his signature style for creating movie set-like spaces for people to live in. He worked on nearly 400 homes, always avoided mass production, and created more chair designs in response to clients wanting custom-designed chairs for their dining rooms, living rooms, and other areas of their home. Haines built a highly successful career as the tastemaker designer to the Hollywood celebrities, socialites, and the well-heeled elite. Here we see him in his studio. His friends and early film industry clients include Joan Crawford, Carol Lombard, George Cukor, Gloria Swanson, Jack and Ann Warner, and many others. After Foster retired in 1945, he renamed the firm from Haines Foster Inc. to William Haines Inc. and soon hires Ted Graber as a design associate. Graber was the son of a cabinet maker and an antiquarian. He became Haines's protege and business partner for nearly 30 years. It's noted that Haines often attributes much of his success to Graber. Haines collaborated with the mid-century modern architect William F. Cody for his studio building at 446 South Cannon Drive in Beverly Hills. The prominent architectural photographer Julia Schulman did a photo shoot of the building and interior spaces in 1949. Here we see Haines showing fabrics to Barbara Lennox, a LA Times reporter. The studio room features cork walls for pinning up drawings and brass pulls for displaying textiles. Curious to see if a connection exists with Haines in Palm Springs, I discovered a handful of Desert Sun newspaper references mentioning Haines and the clients during the 1947 to 60 period and a 1961 telephone directory. His clients in the area included Tom May, Ann Rutherford, Irving Florsheim, Jack Warner, Henry and Nancy Idelson, and others. However, the most surprising discovery was that he had a home in Palm Springs. Who knew this? So this is the ad from January 2nd, 1958, where he offers his property for lease or sale, which is located at 651 Paseo El Mirador. At the time, the house included 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2 maids' rooms, refrigerated air and heat, terrazzo and parquet floors, fine antiques and modern furnishings, a heated pool, 2 televisions, and more. And you could lease this for $2,500 a month with a 3-month minimum. So I calculated that today, so that's a whopping $26,325 a month. Okay. And in 1960, he closes his house down and moves back to Brentwood. Haines' forward-thinking collaborative approach can be summarized in this 1972 quote. I've highlighted 3 sentences of note. He was a marvelous at educating his clients about design. So the first sentence is, the interior decorator, landscape gardener, and architect should all be consulted in the beginning. The 3 should be hired as a unit and work together. And the third is the architect should respect the decorator as much as the decorator respects the architect. And we call this the Sunnylands Dream Team. So Sunnylands was built over a 3-year period from 1963 to 66, and these 2 vintage 1963 photographs show the Dream Team in the open desert. The Dream Team includes the clients Leonore and Walter Annenberg, the architects A. Quincy Jones and Frederick Emmons, designers William Haines and Ted Graber, landscape architects Emmett Wimple, Robert Herrick Carter, and later Rollo Wilhite, and the golf course architect Louis Dick Wilson. So right here we have that's Quincy Jones, A. Quincy Jones. We have here Walter Annenberg, and next to Walter is Billy Haines. Over in this photograph in the center, we see Leonore Annenberg. Behind her in the red shirt here is William Haines. Next to her is Ted Graber, and behind him is A. Quincy Jones. During this period, the Haines clients included the Annenberg close friends such as the Brodys, the Bloomingdales, the Reagans, Frank Sinatra, the Jorgensens, the Deutsches, and others. After completion of Sunnylands, Haines and Graber took on another Annenberg project where they renovated the Winfield House, the U.S. Ambassador residence in London. This circa 1967-68 photograph, we see on the left is Billy Haines, then Ted Graber, then William Haines. Let's start over. On the left is Jimmy Shields, then we have Ted Graber, William Haines, and Walter Annenberg. The Sunnylands' first guest book entry was on March 1966, but it wasn't until a year later that the 2 designers signed the guest book. On March 23, 1967, Haines writes, "It was almost worth it." And Graber followed him with, "It was wonderful doing it." His outspoken, candid comments can be found in the September-October 1972 issue of Architectural Digest, and I've listed a few of his quotes in this slide, in particular highlighted several. There's nothing under the sun there's nothing new under the sun. We all steal from one another. I contend there's no decorator in the world who can make a house good if the architecture is bad. And lastly, a client asked me, "What's your specialty?" I told her, "We collect distinguished clients." So sadly, Haines, on December 26, 1973, died. And Shields, overcome with grief, took his life 3 months later. The couple were together for 47 years and are interned side by side at the Woodlawn Cemetery in Santa Monica. After Haines' death, his associate Ted Graber continued the design practice from 74 through 85. Graber went on to refurbish the White House family quarters for the Reagans and passed away in 2000 at the age of 80. So to celebrate the Haines and the largest collection of over 450 custom-made furnishings created for a specific residence, we undertook a 2-year project to research, document, write, curate, and design an exhibition, Variations to a Theme, William Haines at Sunnylands. We selected over 35 objects for the exhibition, including furniture, lamps, patio and garden furniture, drawings, photographs, textiles, and more, all providing a sense of the magnitude of Haines' vision for Sunnylands. Here's the exhibition title wall with 5 wall platforms with a selection of custom designed chairs in a variety of colors and styles. Notice the font William Haines. This is the original font script used on his invoices and letterhead. Now let's take a peek inside the exhibition. Here we see Walter's home office desk with a portrait of his mother, Sadie, by Leon Gordon, 1933, which hung on the wall behind his knee-hole desk. The desktop is wrapped in leather in a tortoiseshell pattern and gold tooling embellishments and rests on runner legs. A Chinese mustard glazed ceramic figure of an ox, originally a roof tile, is mounted as a lamp using lucite and a walnut base. This slide illustrates a variety of furniture covered in rarely seen trapunto quilted fabric. Sunnylands has the largest collection of trapunto furnishings designed for a single residence. Here we see a pull-up chair, a hostess stool, a ledge-back chair known as a Sanaya, which is Haines spelled backward. This chair is a vibrant overlay of crew work, embroidered flowers, and a diamond-shaped trapunto quilted relief. The winding flowers help introduce nature inside the house. Outdoor spaces are an important design element for the Annenbergs enjoyed entertaining with a selection of over 100 patio furniture pieces to enjoy. Here we see a marble-top breakfast table featuring arrowed legs and lace metal ribbon. The Regency-style chairs with circular backrests may have been inspired from wrought iron gates and fences. Against the wall is a chaise lounge and a marble-top bench with angled legs, evoking a whimsical insect, and a hand-painted mural of the patio's western view of the San Jacinto Mountains. Color and texture play an important and critical role in the Haines canon. Here's a variety of wood sample boards for Sunnylands furnishings. These furnished samples are used as a visual aids by Haines with his clients and feature a variety of colors, faux painting, and varnish treatments. A grouping of textiles were and remain the primary fabrics used at Sunnylands for furniture, draperies, and coverings. One of the all-stars of the collection is this fabulous biscuit-tufted sofa bench, which sits majestically in the primary bedroom. A hand-painted mural backdrop offers the view of the cactus garden from the bedroom. While researching, we discovered a 1953 drawing of a similar bench for Tom May's Palm Springs home. It was called a window bench, but without the raised back or biscuit tuffing. Unfortunately, it was never executed. This is an example of a variation in how Haines would revisit his previous designs and reintroduce them to clients with modifications. Next to the sofa bench is a pair of Chinese turquoise glazed ceramic bird models mounted as lamps using an armature surround. Custom-made lamps are a signature accessory in any Haines interior design. We wrote a 148-page companion book documenting the Sunnylands Haines collection, the house decor, and architecture. New images by London-based photographer David Loftus are featured. You can pick up a copy of the book at the Sunnylands gift shop, online at our website, or out in the lobby after the presentation. So we invite you to come visit the exhibition from Wednesday through Sunday. As a special announcement, the exhibition will be up for an additional season ending in June 2020. 25, so there's plenty of time to come visit us. Admission is always free. To experience the full impact of Haines designs at Sunnylands, we encourage you to book a house tour. You can purchase those tickets at the Sunnylands website. Now I'm going to turn over the podium to Ann Rowe to share her insights on William Haines designs at Sunnylands and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I hope you enjoyed that introduction. When Haines arrived with Jones to build Sunnylands in 1963, he had 30 years of estate design work under his belt. So briefly, I want to get into Haines' work and his influences prior to Sunnylands so we can see how he adapted his aesthetic for this steel tent with a pyramid-shaped roof. And then I'm going to zoom in on some of the details in the Haines interior design at Sunnylands. Haines and others' work earned the moniker Hollywood Regency. This references the merging of two ideas. The Regency design period was between 1811 and 1820, and it remains wildly popular and shown here. This aristocratic tone has notes of flamboyance, glamour, and mischief. These designers created a where's the party feeling, absent in the prior Victorian era. And as an antiques dealer, Haines mined heavily from this era. In simple terms, Haines' fame as a designer came because he updated what was in the 30s a drab Hollywood interior. He inserted the Regency, but with comfort in mind. He paired antiques with his own custom modern furniture and made everything glamorous. He essentially mixed periods before decorators were doing this. So he interpreted the Regency, but made it swinging and current and sexy for Hollywood. Here are two examples. On the left, notice the juxtaposition of the modern geometric paneling behind the tall Regency period antique red secretary. This is a classic Hainesian juxtaposition. Another example on the right has Haines pairing a deeply comfortable modern sofa, a modern tufted leather chair, a sleek, modern, unadorned fireplace mantel, and all paired with a Regency-era maximalist antique mirror. So you get the idea of what he was up to. He once said, quote, "I have always found mixing periods quite normal and often exciting. I was doing this when to be popular meant having a kind of sameness throughout the decor. Spanish tables with Spanish chairs, French chests with French love seats. Boring." He said, "You can mix anything provided it pulls together." It was the Annenbergs who challenged these two greats to come together to create a modern home with a chic Mayan pyramid narrative. They had created homes together, Jones and Haines, before Sunnylands, and in fact were working on other homes together during this time period. Architect Jones was an innovative modernist, and together they created something entirely new and eccentric, this place called Sunnylands. This is a place where the clients had a large voice at the table, and so Sunnylands ended up somewhere between a strict Jonesian modern and a Haines Hollywood blowout. There are a few pillars of Regency style I want to just check in on really quickly so we can see how Haines expressed his Regency tendencies for this odd place called Sunnylands. Happy, joyful fabrics such as damask and chintzes were heavily utilized in the Regency. And for the first time, according to designer Ali Attenborough, elegant rooms boasted matching curtains and upholstery fabric, flamboyant. And at Sunnylands, matching happy-themed draperies to the upholstery is seen in this jaunty custom fabric choice. These sunflower bouquets deliver the same festive atmosphere as in the most festive of Regency parlors. Busy, hand-painted Chinese wallpaper was an important element in the smartest homes of the Regency. Haines used this kind of paper a lot over his long career and paired it with colorful throw pillows, but he did not bring this to Sunnylands. However, Haines did clad every single Sunnylands wall with texture, but rather than elaborate wallpaper, he used a lot of grass cloth wall coverings throughout the house. Can you see the grass cloth? Yeah, good. And here's another wall that is covered in grass cloth. Iteration on the idea of busy wallpaper took a few forms besides the grass cloth. Literally no wall is free of texture at Sunnylands. Examples include lava stone tiles on the left and sandblasted redwood paneling on the right. These two treatments are directly juxtaposed in the central public space. In the cozy room of memories, another wood paneling with a reveal at the bottom was utilized. And this paneling in the primary bedroom is really one of my favorite things in the house. At first, I thought it was faux bois, fake wood. But it's actually real wood paneling, but the grain is faux. So that grain is hand-painted. It's exceptional. Haines clad the walls of guest rooms with fabric applied to the walls and matching the draperies. Regency furniture was all about exotic woods and adornments and referenced antiquity. You feel the grandeur here, but you don't sense the comfort or the playfulness. 200 years later, in the modern Sunnylands, Haines custom furniture delivers a sense of grandeur and comfort to a palatial home. Notice the deep seat. Then notice that this hexagonal canted edge table design for the living room features multiple intersecting exotic materials, including ivory and a variety of woods. In the Regency, craftsmanship and materiality were critically important, and Haines did not drop the ball here in the desert, but rather he reinterpreted it when he designed furniture for Sunnylands. Regency-era sofas and ottomans were decorated with stylish tufting and elaborate trim. Tufting and quilting were used liberally throughout Sunnylands, but not with the elaborate trims. Notice again, the grandeur has a presence, but modernity is delivered in elements like canted legs and deep and wide seats. Other than the leather chairs at Sunnylands, there's not a single piece of furniture in the collection that isn't textured through either quilting or tufting or hand-done crewel work or nubby fabrics or all of them used together on one piece of furniture. And here's another example of the interplay of Regency-esque elaborate inlay paired with flared modern legs. No table surface or table edge was ignored by Haines at Sunnylands. He used a wide variety of faux finishes. Notice the canting or the slanting of the edges of that incredible faux malachite painted table on the left. And on the right, he used hand-painted leather, evoking tortoiseshell, and then gold tooled the top of this desk. Notice there is a lot of intricate architecture in his furniture designs. Haines canted many of the tabletops in the furniture collection. I adore these deep cants on the green guest room desk. And when he doesn't cant the edge of a table, he adds a spectacular detail to create interest. Regency furniture designers were themselves riffing on antiquity. The ancient Greek klezmos chair is shown here, depicted from around 400 BC. It's spare, elegant, has a curved upper back to hug the seated, and it rests on curved saber legs. And notice the back sits atop risers. Haines referenced antique and Regency designs from his earliest beginnings when he designed these chairs for actress Carole Lombard. In these chairs, you see the seedlings of Haines' evolving antiquity towards comfort. When Haines designs chairs for Sunnylands, his variety of klezmos chair iterations prioritize comfort without any loss of glamour. He embellishes the fabric instead of the wood to deliver the luxe. This trapunto quilted seat is one of 20 or so pieces of trapunto quilted furniture in the collection, a really outrageous number for one home. It was the most he ever did for any project. Notice he drops the saber leg and bevels the legs and then cants the legs at a jaunty angle. This is a comfortable chair. Haines brought forward the upper back, lifted on risers from the klezmos era, allowing the clothing to be seen from the back. And for some chair suites at Sunnylands, Haines places the back on risers, but only pads the front side, exposing the wood structure on the back of the chair. And notice all the angles and the bevels in the wood crafting, and how gloriously deep that seat is. Haines continues to play around with that back on risers idea, and in another suite of chairs, he now pierces the curved wings of the back and adds a top rail, also pierced. And then he wraps the seat in a bold faux turquoise painted leather, lending a modern desert chic. And with all of his many modernist adaptations to the klezmos in his leg choices, notice here he snuck back in the saber leg. What a mashup of brilliant ideas. Another example of Haines explicitly referencing a historic piece of furniture is an example, as Frank showed you, that we use in the exhibition gallery, and that is his interpretation of this famous bench, the recamier. With two curved raised ends and nothing on the long sides, this portrait of a woman lying beautifully across a velvet sofa bench with bare feet and a flowing, flirty gown with diaphanous sleeves was so madly popular that this type of bench began to be called a recamier after the woman. It is still called a recamier today. Haines played with this glamorous idea many times over the years, one on which he is perched here in his own home. He called this the Valentine Day bed. And here, Haines riffed on an Empire or Empire bed for the Jack Warner estate, which some say is similar to a boat bed, and some say a gondola bed, and some say it's a forerunner of the American sleigh bed. Arguably, all design is iterative, as he himself admitted, and Haines' encyclopedic understanding of early furniture gave him a lot of things to play with. Haines created a mini version for Carole Lombard, and another iteration he designed for Carole. Now he's added a raised side, but look how deep the indentation is at her feet. That is a soft, luxurious piece of furniture to lay upon. Haines and Carole, I think, must have stayed up late talking about how much fun they could have iterating on Mrs. Recamier's bench. The fun and frolicking during the Regency period had nothing on Haines. The Recamier idea iterates as paired chaise lounges on the south patio at Sunnylands, featuring frames pierced with circle cutouts. So he marries the modern with this classic shape. The Haines Recamier gondola bench for the primary suite at Sunnylands features the addition of a back, as Frank mentioned, set upon lower risers, and of course, deep quilting always for ultimate comfort. And Haines definitely would have noticed the detail of the turned leg on the original Recamier. And for Sunnylands, he wrapped the legs and frame in a creamy, overlapping leather, gilding this lily in a variety of ways. Okay, so I want to take a quick look at two projects Haines and Jones worked on for friends of the Annenbergs. One is a full-on Hollywood Regency redesign on the left for the Bloomingdales, and on the right, from the ground up, Jones and Haines together created a strict modernist home, no Regency to be found. Walter and Leonore saw both of these houses with interiors by Haines and adaptive architecture by Jones on the Bloomingdale's house and the architect of record for the Brody house. And so I want to take a quick peek inside because I believe the Sunnylands design threads the needle right between these two design motifs. I think Sunnylands reflects the Annenbergs' reluctant embrace of a purist modern interior that was delivered to the Brodys. But they also rejected a fussy, maximalist East Coast formal interior design in the desert sand. which they delivered to Betsy Bloomingdale. They already had a fussy antique narrative home in Pennsylvania. They wanted something unique here, and they got it. Quick sidebar, for those of you who are sitting here saying, well, wait, there's antiques, there's Regency-era antiques, full on at Sunnylands. This room was added later in Mrs. Annenberg's life when the home in Philadelphia was closed, and she brought her favorite Regency-era antiques to be near her here at Sunnylands. So it wasn't part of the original design. So in the 50s, Betsy and Alfred Bloomingdale, the department store heirs, hired Haines to infuse their home, which had been Spanish, with what he was known for, a full-on explosion of Hollywood Regency. And he did just that. Notice the elaborate mantelpiece, the maximalist mirror, notice the wallpaper, antique furniture, but with comfortable places to sit. At Sunnylands, we have a lot of paired furniture pieces, as well as mirrored entire setups, as you see on the right and left. At Sunnylands, as I mentioned, he used 0 pieces of antique furniture. Notice the ledges, too, on the back of the chairs. Ledge-back chairs and sofas are a trademark of Haines. Back at the Bloomingdales, notice the black marble inset striping. Here's another view showing how important this detail is to all that stone. And I adore how these stripes climb the stairs and then close the loop at the top. And back at Sunnylands, this inset of a stone band outlined with black borders provides some proof of Haines's fingerprints in the material choices for Sunnylands. And here's another view of that detail, which lends so much to managing such a large expanse of interior stone. So here's a conversation set up for the Bloomingdales with damasks and tassels and antique furniture. Oh my, beautiful. But Haines at Sunnylands brings a similar layout to encourage conversation, but is quite reductivist compared to the Bloomingdale space. Not strictly modern, but also not Hollywood Regency. Notice rather than a stiff antique coffee table, he used a leather-wrapped coffee table with partial waterfall sides, and instead of stiff Chippendale antique chairs, we have deep chairs. And then quilted hostess stools tucked under the coffee table if anyone wants to drop in and insert themselves in this conversation. Here's another conversation area in the vast public living room at Sunnylands. Haines wrestled the enormous public space at Sunnylands into a variety of smaller, intimate conversation areas. And this quilted damask on the sofa is repeated on the draperies throughout the living room. And by the way, those stools swivel for added grooviness in 1966. And the 2 chairs facing each other, they also swivel, and they sit on large ebonized turntables. Back at the Bloomingdales, on the right, we have an explosion of Regency-era maximalism. Notice the fretwork detail on the apron on the antique hallway console table. Haines didn't bring any of that maximal antique vibe to Sunnylands. Instead, he adorned Sunnylands tables in a few wonderful and modern ways. Notice the beautiful wood-pierced brackets here. This interesting vertical spindled frieze holding up the tabletops was used on the underside of all 10 tables in the vast atrium. Yet, the tabletop materials range from marble to thick lucite to leather with gold tooling. But they all share the same distinct framing, but with entirely different top treatments. The name of the exhibition is Variations to a Theme, so this is exactly what we're talking about. Haines' discipline to cohesion while inserting subtle variation is exactly the kind of genius we celebrate in the exhibition. Okay, quickly, turning to another house. Before Haines redesigned the Bloomingdale's house in the 50s, Haines and Jones designed and built this home from the ground up. The Annenbergs admired this famous house known as the Brody House in LA. Sidney and Frances Brody commissioned this stunning modern home in 1949. Notice the trellis above the entry, defining and elevating that space. Rather than using trellises at the entry, Haines and Jones carried over this exterior device, but wrapped the outdoor patio terraces at Sunnylands with these wonderful structures. The Annenbergs and Haines and Jones had something else in mind for the entry to a pyramid. The Annenbergs were great art collectors, and they commissioned monumental artworks from famous artists for Sunnylands grounds. This bronze fountain is by famed Mexican brothers Jose and Tomas Chavez Morado. Many design stories carried over across through Haines's life, including the Brody House. Frances Brody similarly commissioned one-of-a-kind artworks for her home, and in this case from Matisse, to create this beautiful ceramic installation for the patio, floating, of course, above a long custom sofa by Haines. Haines completely dropped his explicit Regency tendencies working with Jones on this project. Complex architectural intersections are a hallmark of the Brody House by Haines and Jones, and they brought that soaring architectural modernity to Sunnylands. Notice the floating wall. Notice the dropped, coffered, floating ceiling that wraps the space. But notice the interiors are soft and not explicitly modern in feeling. The angled hairpin legs at the Brodys were too severe for what Haines had in mind for the Annenbergs, if you look back at that furniture. Totally different. This space is a unique hybrid, incorporating a lot of different ideas. Notice the asymmetry of the furniture arrangement. Notice, too, the Chinese scholars lined up on the wall on little mini shelves. We find in early photos that the Annenbergs initially tried out a more severe angularity, an asymmetry, a modern design for the furniture arrangement. Here's that furniture in action. I think Red Skelton's there, Governor Reagan, a bunch of people. Though it is pretty, I do wonder why it didn't last. Perhaps because the two groups can't see each other? Remember, the Annenbergs were a couple who preferred a round dining table so everyone could see each other. This arrangement, I think it might have felt awkward. Within the strict, balanced Jones architecture, Lee Annenberg and Haines ultimately softened the modern vernacular they saw at the Brody House. The hard-edged sofas were rebuilt to more traditional sofas with arms on both ends and soft curves. Here, the architecture and furniture placement is in balance. The Annenbergs also began their aesthetic journey with Chinese scholars floating on small shelves, as the Brodys had enjoyed, and those soon disappeared in favor of their famous paintings, which migrated to Sunnylands from their principal residence in Philadelphia. Here, Walter is shown talking to granddaughter Lauren Bond. The idea of exposing the structural elements of the building, as seen in the structural steel columns on the right here, is referred to explicit architecture. In other words, rather than wrap those building elements in drywall or stone, you just expose the structure. Jones had left these columns bare and red and pierced, and Lee asked they be softened by painting them green and plugging the holes. Mies van der Rohe, sidebar, did the same sort of cruciform exposed columns in the late 20s at Villa Tugendhat in Brno in the Czech Republic. But notice he mirrored them. How cool is that? I had to sneak that in. I think it's so cool. So here's a great shot of the interplay between explicit architectural structural elements and the pyramidal shape of the roof. Haines and Jones provided the Brodys a dramatic entry, as you saw earlier. Ditto at Sunnylands. And Haines and Jones provided the Brodys custom hardware for the front door. Sidebar, Haines and Jones had some pretty cool hardware to choose from in 1966. Frank recently uncovered this off-the-counter Schlage knob, which was featured in its 1966 catalog, and it's called the Mayan knob, and they didn't use it. But here are the custom door pulls on the front door at Sunnylands. So this is a pause and a question to discuss at a further time, at a future date. I find this really an interesting choice given all the restraint in adornment nearly everywhere else in the design. I often wonder if these were client-directed, purchased, discovered. It was suggested to me recently that perhaps they're Mexican, and so a tie-in to that column that sits out there. I don't know. We haven't been able to substantiate exactly where these came from. But here's a fun picture of the handles in action. Another signature that Haines brought to Sunnylands, as Frank alluded to, is that he was known for his ability to find not just one, but pairs of colorful, fun Chinese ceramic figures and use them as lamps. And here's some more. Just the colors are so beautiful. We had a cloisonné expert visit once, and she said, I think these things were a compliment to their real collection, which was the paintings. And I think she was onto something there. And here are two more. These are my favorite. These are molded with what's called the 100 Antiques motif. It's a compilation of little activities of scholars. I think they're just extraordinary. Back to the more severe Brody house, Haines programmed a permanent game table setup with comfortable chairs. There are 5 prominent game table setups programmed into the permanent design at Sunnylands, including 2 backgammon tables. In fact, this room they called the game room, with its 3 permanent game tables. Tiered furnished patios and the integration of art were important elements for the Brody's modern home, as we saw. And the Annenbergs integrated art as well. I hope you can see that large format painting. It's enamel on metal, and it's just under the chimney box. It is by artist Yaakov Agam, and it's called Sunnylands. Here's a close-up. And here are 2 more Agams that they installed on outdoor patios. And here's a beautiful table set for lunch on the west patio. Love that set of furniture. This set is on view in the exhibition. Haines brought a lot of humor and a sense of fun to Sunnylands. Some of you are familiar with the pillows. They're wonderful. Haines was known for his wonderful sense of humor. I don't think we have any proof that he commissioned these pillows, but we suspect it was Haines. And on the right, Haines was known to use lucite for accessories. And these 5 boxes were probably, we're not sure, cigarette boxes, and later became jelly bean vessels placed in guests' room. There are so many more aspects to cover, but in closing, I want to say that with over 450 pieces of custom furniture to choose from in the Sunnylands collection, the biggest in the world, it was a daunting task to decide what to place in the gallery, because each piece is unique and demonstrates Haines' design brilliance. He prioritized comfortable, happy furniture for Sunnylands. And looking at a piece of his furniture is to see a wide variety of turned woods, leather wraps, exuberant colors, and a sense of fun. Haines tucked nested tables under other tables should the party expand. And his watercolors and his renderings reflect the ultimate design of furniture exactly as he first imagined it. And remarkably, his designs from '66, I hope you'll agree, they look as chic as they do today as they did then. 1966, they still look great. At the end of the day, a Haines interior supports and enhances the party, whether you're at the Bloomingdale's for cocktails or at the Brody's in 1949 in their strict modernist home, or dancing on the Sunnylands terrace. Every Haines design elevates the party, as those designing in the Regency period sought to do 200 years before him. So, as Frank said, we invite you to see the exhibition. Thank you for being here today. And now we're going to bring up Patrick Dragonette, the expert on William Haines furniture in a larger sense than just the Sunnylands collection. Thank you.
Test.
Hi, everybody.
Hello? No? Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patrick Dragonette, and I'm thrilled to be here. Several months ago, I guess it was last year, Anne came to me and told me their plan to do this exhibition, and asked me if I would consider serving as their expert for the exhibition, which was a tremendous honor for me. It's something that I feel I'm very, very proud of because I'm very, very passionate about Haines's work. The first time I ever saw any William Haines work, and I had no idea who he was, it was a pair of chairs that had been purchased from the Warner House in Beverly Hills. And I had somebody who said, "Would you like to sell these chairs for me?" And I just started my business, and I didn't really know who Haines was. And I was like, "Well, you want to bring them and I can see them? Now, let me see if I like them." And he brought this pair of chairs, which is now commonly known as a Brentwood chair. And I saw the chair, and I thought, that is the sexiest chair I've ever seen. And then I sat in the chair, and I thought, that's one of the most comfortable chairs I've ever sat in. The pitch was perfect. The height was perfect. You could lean back and place your arm. To me, it was a marvel, and from that point forward, I was hooked. So I've made it a mission of mine as a dealer to promote the work of William Haines. And part of the beauty of Sunnylands is that you had the Annenbergs who had such forethought and such generosity to leave this estate intact and make it available for everyone to be able to see and experience. And I could still cry when I think about the first time I went to Sunnylands because I literally did cry. I was so blown away. I couldn't believe the majesty of Sunnylands. I'd seen plenty of pictures, but I was there with Janice Lyle and Jean Matheson, who is no longer with us, but who had run Haines Inc. for 30 years. She had run that office. And it just, for me, was an overwhelming experience to be in there. And then to understand a space that large, because it's quite large. How many people here have been, by the way? Oh, wow, that's awesome. So then when you've got a room, you've got a space that vast, part of Haines' genius was that he knew how to make people feel comfortable in it. And he achieved that through symmetry, through repetition, and the colors, the color palette. I could go on, and I think we're supposed to do questions, so I'm gonna stop for a minute and let you guys ask some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Thanks for joining us today. I want to start out with this a discussion of the desert living room pictured on this slide. Others and you have mentioned that the defining moment, the launch of Haines as a superstar designer to the stars, emerged from the desert living room he showed at the Golden Gate International Exposition in San Francisco in 1939. Held to celebrate the building of 2 long suspension bridges, it was held on the then largest man-made island. Our contemporary eyes have adjusted to this lovely room design, but what about this room that ignited his career into the stratosphere?
Well, I think that the first thing you have to acknowledge is that by 1934, his career as an actor was over. So 5 years later, a mere 5 years later, here's a man who has now achieved a level of success as a designer who is being exhibited alongside Francis Elkins, who at this point was a legend, Tommy Parzinger. It certified that he had arrived, is what happened. By being in, and then to do a room that is as exquisite as this room is, said it all. I mean, the floors were leather. They were leather inlaid floors. So if you see the game table and 2 chairs over on that side of the screen, that was all actually rawhide wrapped, parchment wrapped. The chairs were actually all wrapped in leather. They were all whip stitched. They were revolutionary ideas, and no one else was doing them. And I think a real important note to take about this is that Samuel Marks, who was considered by this time quite a star as an architect and a designer, in Marks's house, the only furnishings that he did not design were designed by Billy Haines. He saw them in this room. He went to William Haines and he said, "I want a pair of those chairs for my house, and I want a pair of those sterling and lucite sconces." And so Marx's home in Chicago, the only work that was in that house that was not by him was by Billy Haines, and I think that speaks volumes. So.
Thank you, Patrick. That's really interesting about the sconces and how they kind of replicate the O'Keeffe painting here.
Yeah.
So our next question is, Haines is considered a design master. What characterizes or typifies Haines, and how should we really understand him?
So I think that you can't separate Haines from the person that the man that he was. The fact that he stood by the convictions of who he was, that he remained true to himself, that he refused to play the game, he refused to, get rid of his partner and get a lavender marriage, a beard, whatever you want to call it. There's a story, and I don't know if it's just urban myth or if it's actually true. I'd like to think it is, but Warner. Not Warner. L.B. Mayer called him into his office. There was a big event for the studios, and he said to him, look, you can't bring Jimmy to this party. I don't want him here. You need to bring a date. You need to bring a woman. And Haines looked him straight in the eye and said, well, I'll make you a deal. I don't bring my wife if you don't bring yours. And that sort of was, he stood by what he believed. He was not going to change who he was for anyone. And so if you think about that, and then you think about his work as a designer, there was a purity to his design, and there was a conviction to what he did. He wasn't all over the map. And you have to remember that he worked for a very pretty tight group of people. All of the names you mentioned that were friends of the Annenbergs, they all had homes designed by Haines. So variations on a theme comes when you think. So the Sanaya, which, as I said, was Haines spelled backward, there was a ledge-back version, there was a curved version, and they all had a number, they all had a name. They were different sizes. A lot of times, and especially with production, big point, Haines never, ever, ever in his career designed something that was commercially produced by a furniture line. He only designed per commission for that client. And to that point, the Sanayas could be very different sizes. The Sanayas that were in the Brody house were actually quite large because even Francie Brody was 6 feet tall. And I think her husband, he was like 6'3", 6'4". So they had big, comfortable Sanayas. Other clients, Betsy Bloomingdale was small. Hers were tiny, comparatively speaking. And every idea he had, that's a great a ledge-back Sanaya there. But he had to vary things like the leg, like the base, the certain details. And to me, part of his genius has always been that the furniture that he created, and especially the soft seating, they're relatively simple. But then, and one thing that Sunnylands is such a great example of is how he took that very, very simple form and then would embellish it in ways. One of my favorites, of course, is the trapunto, but also with great quilt patterns, the embroideries, the kinds of fabrics. Even like this chair is a printed fabric, but if you look closely, it is also quilted. So bringing those kind of details, I think, make a big difference in the kind of work that he produced.
Thank you, Patrick. And think of your questions. We're going to leave time for Q&A, right, Mick? Oh, okay. Let's see. Occasionally, a visitor will enter through the front door at Sunnylands and remark that there's a disconnect between the architecture and the approach to furniture, because I think people do look for that sort of sameness. What is your reaction to that? We get that comment once in a while.
I can't respond. That's just silly. That's what I would say. I mean, go to J.W. Sloan and get your furniture there. I just don't get it. To me, that what's interesting and what's so present in the Sunnylands interiors and the building itself are all the contrast. That's what makes design exciting. That's what makes life exciting, right? We don't want the sameness every day. I mean, if you eat the same meal every day, you're going to get pretty bored. You want a little variety, you want contrast, and that's what creates tension and excitement and keeps you firing on all pistons.
We have a question over here. Where did he find his wonderful craftsmen to make the furniture?
Great question. So you have to remember, so he had a theatrical background, or he had a Hollywood background, so he had a relationship with all of these studios that used to make everything. So that was one of the avenues. And then another avenue was the fact that Ted Graeber's father was a cabinet maker. And I think that he did a lot of work for them. And I believe that Ted Graeber's partner did plaster casting. So he did a lot of the castings for Haines. Haines would find like Han Dynasty figures or something that he liked, and then he had them cast in plaster so that he could use them more than once. There's a kind of a famous pair that you'll see in several of his jobs.
Any other questions? Oh, right here.
My guess is that he never went to any college to learn what he learned and how to design. Okay. So we have children today who go to colleges to learn interior design, and somehow the genius came out of him without that formal education. Do you think at all that the formal education we have today suppresses some of the genius and the creativity?
Well, I do design work as well, and I never went to school for design. I just had this conversation with someone. I don't think that, I think that you can't teach people, you can't teach taste and style. I think that when it comes to what you can learn with design is you can learn technical skills, you can learn how to draw. Now, Haines had all of the people to do that. He didn't do his own drawings, he didn't do his own renderings, but he knew how to communicate to get the people who did have the skills to put it on paper to do it well. And he worked with the same people for years and years and years. So I don't know if it stifles or not. I just know that you can't, I believe you either have it or you don't. And what you do might not be for everyone. But as long as you're somebody's cup of tea, then you can work.
We can do one more. It's right after 3. Yes, hold on.
Thank you. Would you comment just a little bit about the maintenance and conservatorship of the collection of furniture that you keep at Sunnylands?
Anne, that would be you.
It's a great question. The other person who asked me that question on a tour was Diane Keaton. And I mention that because she's a thoughtful designer. She's written books on design, and really it does take a lot of maintenance. You have to be dedicated to steward this collection to make sure it's around for future generations. And so in terms of the fabrics, we do have a program where we have an itemized list of what is most degraded, and then that gets sent out, and so on and so on and so on. And in my time there, Janice and I worked for the last 14 years recovering almost all of the furniture. We haven't gotten into the leathers yet. If anyone knows a leather expert, we'll be looking for that next. Okay, Patrick. But thank you for that question. We try to take great care of the furniture, but if you're hearing a little hiccup in my voice, it's because we're an active heritage site. And so those of us who went to museum school, we had to readjust our thinking that we're going to put perfect fabric on this chair and it's going to be sat upon tonight. So we take that into consideration for this important place. It's what the Annenbergs wanted, and that's what we do. Thank you.
So thank you, Frank, Anne, and Patrick. We've gone over by only 5 minutes, but they're up here for a few minutes in case anybody wants to come up and chat a little bit more. Thank you, everyone.